Good evening.
Good evening.
The name John. John in the Hebrew is defined as God is gracious. In biblical sense, it is defined as especially loved by Christ. He was one of 12 apostles. But the John I'm referring to today is my brother John. John was named after his father, John Lee Hall Sr. John was one of 9 siblings, with myself being one of those siblings. When John was born, he was born with a twin sister named Janet. We call her Jan for short. Jan died within 2 years of her birth, which left a tremendous void on John, because even at that early age, as my mom described it, you could see the difference in him until her next daughter was born a couple of years later. John clinged to her as if she was his actual twin. They were inseparable. Anywhere John went, she followed. And John seemed to develop and start to grow after that as far as how he handled that death, even though they was a very young age. We all grew up in a 2-bedroom shack in rural South Georgia. Remember, I said there were 9 siblings. John was the next to the oldest boy. We had an older sister, of course, had 5 sisters and 3 brothers. I myself was the youngest of the boys. At an early age, one thing to notice about John was his kind heart. He was very giving. He made sure that we, as a family, had what we needed. Even at the time, he was not the oldest, but he took on responsibility as one of the oldest. He would make sure that we had food. He would make sure that if he didn't eat, at least his younger siblings got something to eat. John noticed how poor he was because we only had well, let's be honest, we didn't realize we were poor, but John, he kind of knew because he was a little older. So what John ended up doing, he went out and tried to find a job to better help take care of his family. In doing so, after John got into the workforce, it became kind of cumbersome for John. So what John ended up doing, he ended up leaving school. Once he left school, he joined what is called the Job Corps. That was an organization that was designed to help either underprivileged kids or kids that were looking for a better way of life and through finding meaningful work. So after that, John had never been away from home, so of course it was taxing for John. Remember, I talked about how humble he was giving, he was kind. Well, he was faced with different obstacles as he left home, so which drove him back to home, as well as returning to school. John was able to graduate from high school and met his wife in high school, Beverly. Now, I talked a little bit earlier about John and how he was missing and had that void in his life from his sister passing. Well, that was still evident when he had his firstborn. He named her Janet, right after his twin sister. John always wanted a boy. But after 2 more tries, he had 2 more girls. But still, he named the second girl Jasmine, and then he named the third girl Janicia, all still having that base of Jane. So as a tribute, he named all 3 of his girls in remembrance of his twin sister. Now, life still wasn't easy for John. He had a good foundation, a good background, but through peer pressure, remember, I always talk about he was humble, he was giving, and that sometimes even made him gullible. And he got with the wrong crowd, with the wrong influence, with bad peer pressure, and actually started to experiment with drugs. This started to lead him down a bad path, but it still didn't derail him from his destiny, because myself, along with John and our other siblings, we grew up as a religious family, staying in church sometimes even all day. And that influence and that remembrance of what he learned inside of that church brought John back. That's why John today is one of the most people that I admire in the world, because he was able to kick what most can't do, that drug habit, and become very successful. As John ended up coming back from that affliction, I would call it, because drugs itself can be hard, he actually remembered his roots and got into church. He shortly became a deacon after joining the church. John still, that wasn't enough for John because that drive, that desire to want to do more, John ended up joining Bible college and started to go to college at night while he was still providing for his family during the day. After a short time in Bible college, John actually became a minister. His professors and his spiritual advisors noticed something special in John, and they were able to even minister to him more. And not only did he become a minister, he actually became a pastor of his own little small flock. He got his own church at the age of 55. Now, I've been talking about John, my brother, and I've been talking about John, the humble individual that I've known throughout the years. But it was evident to me of John, the pastor, once I witnessed something that I nor my family probably ever would have thought that we would see. Meaning the man John being transferred into that pastor that we didn't always know. This occurred when that same sibling I talked about earlier, she got diagnosed with cancer. And at one point, at the end of her life, when the cancer had taken over, I was able to stand beside John and see him minister over her. And during that time, when he ministered over her, I could see the calmness come over her as well as the family, as if she knew that everything was going to be okay. Little did we all know, John, he was explaining to her where she had to go and where she would be, and just to not hold on to this life, but to move on to another life. Like I said, neither did we know, less than 10 months later, John himself would also die. That was very hard for us as a family, but one thing we knew is John had reached his pinnacle. He had done what he set out to do, and what we all strive to do as Christians is to reach that point where we are walking next to the Father. We don't know the time, the day, nor the place, but we can all hope to live half the life that John lived. And that from that day to this day, John will forever be my mentor in life and my role model. He never knew that. I never had an opportunity to tell him that. But if you ever get the opportunity to tell somebody that, you make sure that you tell them what they mean to you in your life. So this is my commemorative speech on my brother, the pastor, the brother, the minister, my brother, John. Thank you all.